Okay, good morning, good Erev Shabbos, everybody. We live in a society where expedience and convenience seems to be primary in our lives. We try to do shortcuts for everything. And it's not uncommon that if people can avoid washing and benching, they would rather do so. And this gave rise to something that has been called Mizonos bread. And I want to analyze what, in fact, it is and what it isn't. Uh, People eat on the run. People are not always able to wash and bench in an appropriate way. And people have labeled with a kosher certification certain types of rolls as Mizonos rolls. I think it's a misnomer because in actuality, something is either cake or bread. However, there are categories, and halacha is very precise and very mathematical in this regard. Bread has a very special distinction in halacha. If you're eating something that is called lechem or pas, it requires not only netilas yadayim and birkas hamotzi, but also requires birkas hamazon. And in our fast-paced society, people don't always want to take the time to wash and bench. We have to analyze the categories of halacha that apply to this concept. You can go on the streets of Borough Park and get a hot dog and a roll and a bun, but it's a Mazonos bun. So if you're on the street waiting for a bus having a hot dog, obviously you're not going to wash. And benching is obviously avoided if it's only a Mazonos. This is an unfortunate byproduct of misinterpretation or over reliance on a very weak leniency, which we'll talk about. The definition of bread is something that is made from the 5 major grains: wheat, rye, oat, barley, and spelt. We went out, wheat, oat, yeah. There are 5 major grains. And if it's from these grains, it can be called bread or it can be called cake, depending on how it's used and whether it's dough or flour alone, or whether it's mixed with fruits or nuts or flavoring or chocolate and so forth. That changes the nature of it completely. There's another category, or is it the definition of bread, the type of mixture it is, because it could be, I mean, flour is used for cake as well as bread. We'll talk about that. But most importantly is another halakhic concept known as kvias suda. If you are making this concoction of bread or cake, whatever it might be, this is your meal, then that also might, even though it might just be cake, it might also require washing and benching, which is an important halakhic cut. So you have the definition of bread and the usage. If you have a box of cookies and you are kaveya seuda, that is your lunch. You don't have a sandwich, you have a box of cookies, and that is your lunch. You have to wash and bench over that box of cookies because the amount of mazonos that you've consumed constitutes a meal. V'achalta v'savata uveirachta. You have to bench and possibly wash as well. Different types of flour mixtures are called either bread or masa kedera. How do I translate? Cooked foods. To rise to the status of lechem, it has to be flour and water primarily. Once you add flavorings like chocolate or nuts or make a pocket, a pocket, you stuff it with raisins or other kind of fruit, that becomes pasa barbekisnin, which is a mizonos. So if I have a cherry cheese Danish, that's Mazonos. But if it's a very large cherry cheese Danish, or if I have 2 or 3, and that becomes my meal, then even though technically it's a Mazonos, but it's sufficient of Mazonos to be Kovea Seuda to make that your meal, it requires benching. So there's a specific bracha for bread.
Wally?
Yes.
So if you have falafel, do you make a mazonos even though you're going to bench?
No, falafel is hamotzi.
But it's the bread that was stuffed.
No,
just
it was
falafel.
stuffed after it was cooked.
Well, is the falafel, are the falafel balls in a pita bread or just a falafel by itself?
In the pita bread.
Well, the pita bread is hamotzi.
Yeah.
It's like any other sandwich.
The pita bread is hamotzi. The problem is, in the definition of bread, bread is a mixture of flour and water. That becomes bread. You have now certain types of mixtures of flour or water are questionable in halacha. For example, matzah. Matzah is basically a cracker. And normally you make mazonos on crackers. But since on Pesach, that is the major mitzvah, so Chazal tell you make hamotzi on the matzah. Interestingly, Sephardim all year long make mazonos on matzah, except on Pesach, because that's the ikar mitzvah of Pesach. So cake can be a Danish, a cake can be a cracker. We have, for example, if you're eating Melba toast or bagel chips or pita chips, which are basically bread cut into small pieces, that probably requires hamotzi and benching, even though it's a cracker. These are very interesting halachas. That's why to be yotze, because and to avoid any doubt, if you're eating Melba toast or bagel chips or matzah crackers, you probably should wash beforehand over a regular piece of bread or on those crackers, because they're really pieces of matzah or bread cut into small slices. It's a serious halachic problem. The definition of bread, as I said, is flour mixed with water. What if you mix flour with fruit juice instead of water? Does that become bread or does that become cake? And this is the very flimsy halacha that those rabbis who give a hechsher on mazonos rolls rely on. Because mazonos rolls are basically flour mixed with apple juice. No water. So technically, you might have a very weak heter to say it's mazonos, not hamotzi. But almost all poskim would tell you that, bread by any other appearance is bread. The form, the taste, again, purely technically, you can make mazonos on flour and fruit juice, as long as there's no water involved. But and that's the heter that rely on. But again, you can't get around the issue of kaveh seuda, and that's a sticking point, and that's why I would urge people to be aware of the fact that mazonos rolls don't really exist, and mazonos roll by any other name is still hamotzi. Your
Dr. Greene?
kaveh seuda on it, yes.
Dr. Greene, maybe could you explain what to do on an airplane when you get a mazonos roll and you want to eat your meal and it's very inconvenient to get up and go wash because the flight attendants are in the aisle. So on the kiosk yadayim, how to rub your hands, how not to touch the bread and make hamotzi. Could you explain the procedure, please?
If you're on an airplane and you can't get up to wash and you're given a so-called mazonos roll, I would simply say, hold it with a napkin, don't touch it with your hand, and make hamotzi. That would be the preferred method of doing it. Hold it with a napkin so you don't actually touch it with your hands, make hamotzi and bench.
I think also you would rub your hands on something like your clothes and make Baruch Atah Hashem Lakam Chalam on the kiosk, the cleaning of the hands. I think
Yeah,
that's also before.
that is an approach. It's a minority opinion, but yes, you. It's preferable simply not to touch it with your hands, but you can do that too. You can rub it. The Gemara talks about rubbing your hands in dirt. You know, if you're on the road and there's no water nearby, rubbing it on a seat or a clothing, maybe. But the easiest way to do it is holding on to a napkin. And again, as I said before, even if you're eating cookies or a large Dane, or a classic example, those large soft pretzels would probably require hamotzi. And there are other posts who say that. These are issues that people may not be aware of.
Wally,
Yes.
do you have to have yeast or no?
No.
Okay, so I'll give you an example because I just looked it up on Google. Pie crust is flour, sugar, water, salt.
Okay, but that's the classic.
And water. So what? It's the same ingredients that go into bread. If you don't eat yeast,
yes. However,
to be a motzi.
No question about it. Again, if you have one slice of pie, it's mizonos because it's stuffed with fruit or whatever it's stuffed with. But if you're having 3 or 4 slices of pie, you probably have to bench because if you're kaveh seuda on it, there's a big problem in contemporary in homes on Shabbos. Very often, I know I have this issue with my daughter, who's an excellent baker, and she bakes challah with all types of fillings, with cinnamon and with onions and with chocolate, all kinds of fancy challahs. And it's quite possible that those challahs are problematic for hamotzi because it looks more like a cake. So there are halachic issues with those type of things as well. If you go to a kiddush or a wedding smorgasbord and you're noshing on egg salad or chopped liver or a herring with a lot of crackers, it would probably require hamotzi. That is why in some halachically oriented catering halls, they put out cups and pieces of bread to wash before the shmorg, because there are halachic issues of all the nashing that you do and all the crackers that you be eating with all the different types of things on it. It might rise to the level of requiring berkas hamazon. So all of these issues, and there's even I can't believe this, but I've heard that there are some caterers who will put out so-called mazonos rolls on tables at a wedding so guests don't have to bother with washing and benching, which is problematic for a number of reasons. Most importantly, because the most important part of the wedding is the Sheva Brachos afterwards. And if you're not going to bench, you're not saying Sheva Brachos, what's the purpose of sitting down to the Seudah after the chuppah? So the word mazonos bread is a contradiction in term.
Rabbi?
Yes.
I have a question, pardon my ignorance. The hold on an airplane, the holding of the supposed mazono roll in a napkin.
Yeah.
What is the purpose of that?
Because your hands are in a technical state of tuma, which is what the reason that we wash. Why do we wash all together before bread? The whole reason that we wash all together is that Kohanim should not forget that they have to do the tilas yadayim before they do the avoda. So we wash to sanctify, to cleanse, to purify our hands. So technically, our hands are what they call shniyim latuma. That they are technically, how would I translate it into English? It's not tame, but it's not
like tame once removed.
Yeah, but it's in a state of ritual impurity, which would not allow you to touch food. Put it that way. So by washing before you eat bread, you're removing that impurity from your hands. So by eating with a napkin, you're not touching the bread, and therefore that isn't the problem anymore.
So when you go on certain airlines and you order like, your kosher thing, you get your tray,
Right.
a reputable kosher caterer. And then there's that little piece of paper, the card that's usually in Hebrew and English, sometimes also in Yiddish. And it says that these are mazono, or it says the roll is not mazono. But if it says mazono, so were they doing the makil approach?
They are doing an extreme makil approach. Again, in order to make hamotzi, so you have to be, number one, it has to be flour and water. It has to be a certain quantity, and you have to be koveya seuda. That becomes your meal. So if it's not made with water, then technically it's not considered bread, it's considered cake. But they haven't gotten around the issue of koveya seuda. And that's why it's a very schwach heter. It's a very weak leniency that they are relying upon. And if you were to ask most rabbanim today, they would tell you that mizonos bread is a contradiction in terms. It's either mizonos or it's bread.
So the way around it all together is don't eat it. Like I
Yeah, of course. When I'm on an airplane, I don't eat the roll. I just eat
Right.
everything else.
I don't eat.
You have to make many more brachos, but that's the nature of it. So,
Wally,
yes. Who's up?
what is it? What about one slice of pizza?
Oh, good. So we come back again to the category of kvias seuda. If you're eating one slice of pizza and you're koveya seuda on that, that is your meal. For example, when I was younger, I could polish off 2 or 3 slices of pizza without breathing hard. No problem. Today, if I have 1 slice of pizza, I am done. That is my lunch. So if you are koveya seuda on a slice of pizza, most people, 1 slice of pizza is sufficient. And I think I mentioned once before, when they first came out with kosher pizza, I'm going back now to the early 60s, there was one pizza store on the Lower East Side, and everybody used to go there on Saturday night. What they would do to avoid any problems, they would tell everybody to wash, and they had little pieces of pita bread by the washing stand before you ate your pizza. So, but the Sephardim generally make mazonos on 1 slice. If they're having more than 1 slice, they wash. The general position among most Ashkenazic poskim is that 1 slice of pizza you should wash for, because you are being koveya seuda on it. That is your meal. And if you want to be extra special careful, so you wash on a piece of bread first before you eat your pizza. But 1 slice of pizza today you would wash for, unless you are Sephardi, and they rely on their rabbis' interpretations. But 1 slice of pizza. Bagels also at one time were questionable, because a bagel is first boiled before it's baked. So is that considered masa kedera? These are halakhic debates in the Gemara and Brachos. Is a bagel hamotzi or mazonos? But since it's baked after it's boiled, so, and you are again, the koveya seuda part is important. We make hamotzi on bagels as well.
Now we need Mizonos pizza. I don't know why they can't do it.
But
Right?
again, even it would be the same problem as mazonos rolls. If you made pizza dough,
No, it's two svekos. It's a sveka.
yeah, all right, but
Right.
it would be the same issue with the mazonos roll, because again, if you it isn't just the ingredients alone; it's what you do with it.
It's the kaviyas suda. You're
So
right.
if you're koveya seuda,
It also depends on the thickness of the slice. You could go to a place that's very, very thin pizza, and that's really a snack. You're not going to be full with that. So that you got to be honest about. If you are not going to be satiated, then it's technically a mazonos.
okay, but in those kind of pizza stores, you'll probably order 2 slices.
Yeah.
So therefore, you have to wash.
You also have to be aware that the square pizza is baked first, and then the toppings are put
Yeah,
on.
they say square
So-
pizza is automatically a motzi,
Let's see.
the Sicilian.
Yeah, all right, so these are all interesting halachic issues.
How about French toast?
French toast is bread.
Yeah, but you kind of altering it by soaking it into eggs and all kind of concoctions, and then you're frying it.
It's still hamotzi.
Yeah, what I heard was in my yeshiva days going back that you're better off going ahead and making a motzi on a piece of bread before you have that.
Okay, but
I don't know if that's the same thing today, but that's what I heard.
French toast is not pancakes. French toast is essentially bread. Now you take the bread and then you're soaking it in egg, but it's still bread. It's still bread. Yeah, and look, even the name French toast. Toast implies bread.
Perhaps the solution is educating the public that benching does not require past Yechasrenu. So if people are in a hurry, they could quickly say the first 3 brachos sitting down, and then Tova Meitiv, they could say that while they're getting up to leave. And if they're really in a rush, they could say Baruch Rachmana, that something Haipita, whatever the Gemara in Bracha says.
Yeah,
the Yotzei Daraisa. So at least you had the right bracha and the right bracha acharona. So that would be the easier way to educate people, because if you keep telling them you have to wash and bench, then a lot of people are simply not going to wash and bench till you Baruch Hashem Shalom, because it does take too long.
You're making too many assumptions about people. People just don't want to be bothered. That's the bottom line. Nobody is rushing out to any emergency.
Most of the time.
Unless you're at a wedding or a simcha and you're a doctor on call and there's an emergency, most people are not in such a rush that they can't take 4 or 5 minutes to bench. It's just an excuse for laziness, in my humble opinion. In any event, we've learned.
One more question, Wally.
Yeah.
Wally, you want to comment on benching but not washing?
Well, if you started out eating a few cookies, and you end up eating the whole box, so that's a case of benching without washing. If you have a bowl of oatmeal, it's mazonos. But if you're very hungry and you add 2 or 3 bowls of oatmeal, you might have to bench afterwards.
Wally, what about breakfast cereal, cornflakes, and so forth?
Well, it depends. Cornflakes is not mazonos, but Cheerios is. Depends what it's made of and how much of it you eat. Most people are not going to have 4 or 5 bowls of cereal at one time. So it's mazonos.
Wally, what about macaroni?
Macaroni's mazonos.
Yeah, but if you go to a restaurant and you have a macaroni dish, that's your meal. Do you bench after?
It depends how much macaroni you eat. If you had 2 or 3 portions of it, you might have to bench.
Well, most restaurants, one portion is like 2 or 3.
Yeah, the safest thing to do if you're very, very hungry is to make a mostly on a piece of bread before you sit down, not knowing where you're going to wind up. Again, some teenage boys could eat 3 or 4 bowls of macaroni without breathing hard. Most people, 1 bowl is enough. So the amount that you consume, again, we go back to the halacha. It's not the ingredients alone, but it's the koveya seuda aspect of it. We just read about it in Torah. If you eat, if you're satiated, benching is required. Different people have different levels of what it takes to satisfy them, but the halacha has certain quantities. Most people are not going to bench after a couple of bowls of cereal, but maybe they should, depending on how much quantity they eat.
Dr. Greene, I think tzuras hapas is the essential thing. I think macaroni, spaghetti is never going to be tzuras hapas. So that's what one Rav told me, that could never be a kviya suda, because it's not tzuras hapas, unlike pizza.
I would beg to differ. Beg to differ. Tzuras hapas is important, but it's not determinative in terms of benching. Quantity of the mazonos is what makes the difference.
Okay.
You have a lot, as I said, if you have a whole box of cookies, you started out making them mazonos, and then you kept on eating the cookies. You're watching a movie or a football game or whatever it might be, and you're just constantly eating all these cookies. By the time you're done, you finish a whole box of cookies. That would require birkas hamazon.
If you had it in the, if you had a kazayas, b'chdei achilas pras, and obviously.
Yeah, but it's more than a kazayas. I mean,
Yeah. You're having a whole box. Yeah.
of mazonos. Yeah. So the safest thing is always to wash beforehand and have a piece of bread, especially. And again, I would encourage people. We should go to many weddings and smachot, but when you
Right.
go to a smorgasbord, wash before you go inside. It's the safest thing to do, and you avoid a lot of halakhic issues with all the mazonos and crackers and spreads and things you might want to taste while you're inside. There are so many questions. When you go to a smorgasbord, there are so many halakhic issues. There's the fruit table, there's the fish table, there's the meat table, there's the cakes. What is the order? Where should halakhically, where should your first bite take place? And in all probability, you should make mazonos before you do anything else.
Dr. Greene, when I go to Estihana, for example, I grab a fortune cookie on my way in. So it's a mazonos. I order a soup. So there is usually a bor priyadoma in the soup, and then a shahakol on water or the liquid of the soup. So that's how I cover all my brachas.
But a wedding is much more complicated.
Yeah, a wedding is you got fruit, you got fruit from Eretz Yisrael, you got wine. A wedding, you have everything. You're right.
The safest thing to do is to wash before you go into a shmorg. And then you can eat whatever you want to eat, whatever order you want to eat. I think I mentioned once before that many years ago, when a young girl would get engaged, and they would bring the chassan to meet the girl's parents. So they would put out a huge spread of different fruits and different cakes made with different types of flour, and they would watch to see which item he takes first and what the order of brachos he makes to see if the guy's a lamdan or not. You have to take the first thing you have to do is to eat a cookie made from wheat, and then if you have fruit on the table, you go for the grapes first. I mean, there's an order of what based on psukim in the chumash as to which bracha you make, and that's how they would tell if the guy. I mean, if the guy was smart, he would say, "I want to wash," avoid the whole problem. But you want to check out the guy's bona fides if he's a lamdan, and to know the order of fruit that you make a bracha on, the order of grains that you make a bracha, and it's all based on psukim, chita, sa'ora, etc. Rimon to eight, gefen, rimon to eight. It's all based on psukim, and the way they're mentioned in order as a pasuk. If you have multiple fruits on a table from this category, you have to eat that fruit. If you have grapes on a table, that takes precedence first, and then you eat the other. Then if you have pomegranates before the cantaloupe. Same thing if you have wheat, oats, barley. The wheat goes before the barley or the spelt. If they have those type of cookies.
Dr. Greene, talking about going to a shidduch house, I have a joke, but you really have to stop the recording for this. Yeah, in the old days, houses didn't have 10 different rooms. There was a dining room, living room, and this house where someone went on a shidduch had the bathroom right next to the dining room. So the boy said he has to go to the bathroom. And they said, okay, right here. So he was embarrassed. He went to the bathroom. He turned on the water very loud so that the so the shadchan asked the girl, so tell me about the boy. She said he's a good boy, but pished via fared.
He's like a horse.
Amazing, Yovin. All right. Any other questions about mazonos bread?
Thank you.
Okay, enjoy your challah. Have a good
Yeah,
Shabbos.
Have a good
Shabbos.
Shabbos.
It's not healthy to eat whole bags of cookies.
Don't eat it. It's not healthy for you.
Have a good Shabbos, Giannis.
Have a good Shabbos.